The neon lights of Seoul's underworld flickered like broken stars when Jang Woo-jin, the most feared mafia boss in the city, was ambushed by rivals. Bullets rained in the night, cutting through his convoy, and though he fought savagely, one struck deep into his side. His men dragged him into a hidden alley, desperate to keep their leader alive. Woo-jin was no stranger to pain, but this wound threatened to drag him into the abyss. He needed a doctor, and not just any doctor. That's how fate brought Dr. Purity and George, a fiery young African surgeon working at a Seoul trauma clinic, into his life. She had built a reputation for being fearless, outspoken, and brilliant, saving lives even when the odds were grim. That night, his men stormed her small clinic, forcing her to come. "Save him," one of them ordered, pressing a gun against the wall. Purity didn't flinch. Her sharp eyes moved over the bleeding man sprawled on the table. "If you want him alive, put that gun down and get me what I ask. Otherwise, watch your boss die." Even in agony, Woo-jin's lips curled faintly. No one had ever spoken with such fire to his men, let alone to him. She worked with steady hands, stitching his wound while cursing his recklessness. Hours passed before she finally said, breathless, "He'll live, but he needs care, and if you move him too soon, he'll die." Woo-jin opened his eyes, dark and piercing, and whispered, "You're bold, doctor." She rolled her eyes. "You're reckless." Days later, when Woo-jin regained strength, he made a decision that shocked even his men. Instead of letting her go, he ordered her kept in his mansion. "You saved my life," he told her in his deep, commanding voice. "And now you belong to me. I don't let go of what's mine." Purity's fiery spirit clashed with his dominance. "I'm not your possession," she snapped. "I'm a doctor, not a pet." But the mafia boss was used to bending the world to his will. Still, every time he tried to control her, Purity pushed back, challenging him in ways no one ever dared. She treated his men with compassion, scolded Woo-jin for risking his health, and refused to bow her head. And strangely, he found himself drawn to her fire, her stubborn pride, her refusal to be broken. What began as abduction turned into a dangerous bond. She saw the cracks in his ruthless armor, the scars of a man who carried the weight of blood and betrayal. And he saw in her something he'd never known before. Someone who wasn't afraid of him, someone who could stand beside him rather than beneath him. The mafia world whispered in fear of the African doctor who tamed the tiger of Seoul. And Woo-jin? He realized he had not just abducted her, he had been captured himself. The mansion was unlike anything Purity had ever seen. Lavish halls dripping with gold, glass walls overlooking Seoul's skyline, guarded corridors patrolled by men who bowed at Woo-jin's every glance. But to her it was a cage. Purity tried to escape the very first night. She tiptoed past guards, climbed over a garden wall, and almost reached the street, only for Woo-jin himself to block her path, leaning casually against a black car despite the stitches still fresh in his side. "You're stubborn, doctor," he said in his low voice, stepping closer. "But if you leave, who will scold me into eating my medicine? Who will glare at me when I light a cigar?" Purity's chin lifted. "I don't care what happens to you. You're a criminal. I'm not your prisoner." He smirked, though his eyes darkened. "Not a prisoner, my guest. But if you run again, I won't be so forgiving." Days turned into weeks. Purity's fire never dimmed. She treated Woo-jin's wound carefully but berated him when he tried to move too soon. She treated his men's bruises and knife cuts, refusing payment, insisting, "If I heal you, you owe me nothing. I do it because it's right." The men who once sneered at her began to respect her. Some even called her Agassi, lady. But with Woo-jin, the tension grew unbearable. He would sit across from her at dinner, watching in silence as she ate, his gaze sharp enough to burn through her. He would ask about her family in Kenya, her dreams, her fears, and she realized he wasn't mocking her. He was curious. One stormy night, Purity snapped at him. "Why me? You could have any woman in Seoul throwing herself at your feet. Why keep me here?" Woo-jin leaned close, his presence overwhelming. Because none of them look me in the eye and tell me the truth. None of them fight me. None of them make me forget I'm a monster. For the first time, his mask cracked. She saw the man beneath, the boy who had grown up in violence, the lonely soul who commanded an empire but trusted no one. Her heart wavered, but danger was never far. Wu Jin's enemies learned of the foreign doctor in his mansion. One night, a rival gang broke through, bullets echoing in the halls. Purity was dragged by a masked man, a knife pressed to her throat. "Boss!" one of Wu Jin's men shouted. "They've got her!" Wu Jin's eyes turned murderous as he raised his gun. The room stilled. "Let her go," he growled. The rival sneered. "Give up your territory, Jiang Wu Jin, or we will kill your little pet." At that moment, Purity realized the truth. She wasn't just his doctor anymore. She was his weakness. The blade pressed against Purity's throat was cold, but her spirit burned hotter. She refused to whimper or beg. Her eyes locked on Wu Jin's, as if daring him to act. "Territory or her life?" the rival screamed, tightening his grip. The hall was silent except for the pounding of rain against the windows. Wu Jin's men had their guns drawn, but they waited for his signal. Wu Jin slowly raised his weapon, his gaze never leaving Purity's face. His voice was calm, deadly calm. "Do you think I built an empire by surrendering?" He cocked the gun. "Touch her, and I'll paint these walls with your blood." Purity's heart pounded. She knew this man was capable of killing without hesitation, but his eyes weren't just burning with rage. They burned with fear of losing her. The rival laughed nervously. "You won't risk her life. She's the only doctor who..." A gunshot cracked through the storm. The rival's body collapsed instantly, a neat bullet hole in his forehead. Wu Jin hadn't missed. He never missed. Purity stumbled free, breathless. Wu Jin's men rushed forward to finish off the intruders, but Wu Jin strode straight to her, grabbing her shoulders, scanning her frantically as if making sure she was real. "You're not hurt." His voice was rough, unsteady. Purity swallowed, shaken. I'm fine." Without another word, he pulled her against him, his grip almost crushing. For the first time, Purity felt the weight of his fear, the desperation in his embrace. This wasn't the cold mafia boss the world trembled before. This was a man who had almost lost the only light left in his darkness. Later, in the quiet of his private chambers, Purity finally spoke. "You killed him, just like that. No hesitation." Wu Jin's eyes were cold again, the mask slipping back into place. "That's who I am, doctor. That's why you'll never be free of me. Because the world out there is more dangerous than I am, and only by my side are you safe." Purity stared at him, torn. Part of her wanted to scream that she didn't need his protection. Another part remembered the trembling in his hands when he held her close. "You think keeping me here is protection," she said softly. "But maybe you just don't want to be alone." The words hit him harder than any bullet. For once, Wu Jin didn't reply. He simply looked at her. Any bullet. For once, Wu Jin didn't reply. He simply looked at her, silent, as if she had peeled away the last layer of his armor. But Purity knew one thing: her life was no longer just hers. She was tangled in his world, his enemies now her enemies, his shadow now her own. And though her heart whispered warnings, it also whispered something far more dangerous. "You are falling for him." That night, after the attack, Purity couldn't sleep. The storm outside had eased, but inside her chest, a storm raged on. She replayed the moment Wu Jin pulled her into his arms. How fierce, how desperate, how utterly vulnerable he had been. The door creaked open. Wu Jin entered quietly, his shirt undone at the collar, his hair damp as though he'd showered away the blood of battle. His gaze softened when it fell on her, sitting on the couch with her knees drawn up. "You should rest," he said. His voice was gentler than she had ever heard. She shook her head. "How could I after tonight? You kill without blinking, Wu Jin, and yet you hold me as if I'm made of glass. Who are you really?" For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he crossed the room, kneeling before her. His hands, rough from years of violence, reached for hers but hesitated, as if afraid she might pull away. "I am two men, Purity," he confessed. "The monster the world made me, and the man you bring out when you look at me like that." Her breath caught. She wanted to resist. She had promised herself she would never be drawn into his darkness, but the raw honesty in his eyes melted her defenses. "Wu Jin," she whispered, his name trembling on her lips. His hand finally claimed hers, warm and firm. "I told myself I kept you here because you saved my life, but that was a lie. The truth is, I cannot let you go because you've become the only thing that reminds me I'm still human." Her heart thudded wildly. Against her better judgment, against every warning her mind screamed, she leaned closer. His scent, dangerous and intoxicating, wrapped around her. "Maybe," she said softly, "there's more to you than a monster and a mafia boss. Maybe there's a man who just wants to be loved." Something flickered in his eyes, hope, sharp and fragile. He lifted her hand to his lips, brushing a kiss across her knuckles, reverent as if she were untouchable. But Purity, bold and fiery, tilted his chin upward. "Don't hide behind gentleness, Wu Jin. If you want me, show me." His restraint shattered. In one swift motion, he pulled her into his arms, his lips claiming hers with a hunger that had been burning since the moment she stitched his wounds. She gasped against him, then melted, her hands gripping his shirt as though the world might collapse if she let go. It was not the kiss of a mafia boss. It was the kiss of a man starved of love, desperate, raw, and aching. And Purity, fiery as she was, kissed him back with equal passion, setting his darkness ablaze with light. When they finally broke apart, breathless, his forehead rested against hers. "You should hate me," he murmured. "But if you ever leave me, I will lose the last piece of myself worth saving." Purity's heart trembled. She should run. She should resist. Yet as she looked at him, the truth crashed down like a wave. She was already his, not because he had taken her, but because her heart had chosen him. After that night's kiss, something shifted between them. Purity woke in the mornings to find Wu Jin already waiting at the breakfast table, pretending to read reports but stealing glances at her when he thought she wasn't looking. His once icy mansion felt warmer now, filled with quiet laughter when she teased him about his terrible Korean proverbs, or when he teased her about her stubborn refusal to eat with chopsticks properly. Sometimes, in fleeting moments, she forgot he was a mafia boss. But the world never lets them forget for long. One evening, Wu Jin took her to the rooftop garden of his mansion. Seoul glittered below them, alive with neon and noise. He stood behind her, wrapping his coat around her shoulders to shield her from the chill. "You could have been anywhere in the world," he murmured, his breath brushing her ear. "A brilliant doctor, free, respected. And yet you're here, with me." Purity turned, her fiery eyes challenging him. "Don't flatter yourself, Wu Jin. I didn't choose this. You took me." He smiled faintly, but there was pain in it. "Yes, I did. But tell me, Purity, if I open the gates right now, if I gave you your freedom back, would you leave?" The question struck her silent. Her mind screamed yes, but her heart faltered. She thought of his arms around her, his lips against hers, the way he softened only for her, and that terrified her more than his guns ever could. Before she could answer, his phone buzzed sharply. His expression darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. Then his voice hardened. "The police know about you." Her stomach dropped. "Me? Why me?" Wu Jin's jaw clenched. "They think you're my weakness. They'll try to use you to break me." Purity's breath quickened. Images of her career, her reputation, her freedom, all at risk. And yet, the thought that leaving him might mean never seeing his face again made her chest ache unbearably. Wu Jin stepped closer, gripping her hands, his voice raw. "They'll come for you, Purity, but I won't let them take you from me. I'll burn the whole city if I must." Tears stung her eyes, though she blinked them away. "Wu Jin, this is madness. You can't protect me forever. One day, This world of yours will swallow us both. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. Then let it. As long as I die with you in my arms, I'll go smiling. Her heart shattered and healed in the same breath. Against every law of reason, against every warning inside her, she leaned forward and kissed him again. Slow this time, tender, sealing her fate. Because whether it ended in freedom, ruin, or death, she was already his. The morning after their rooftop confession, Purity walked through the mansion's halls with a strange heaviness in her chest. Wu Jin's men bowed their heads to her now. Some even greeted her warmly. She was no longer the abducted stranger. She was their boss's woman. But every look carried a silent question. How long before she runs? That night, Wu Jin found her in the study, curled up with a medical journal. He sat across from her, silent at first, just watching her lips move faintly as she read. Then softly he asked, "Do you ever dream of leaving, Purity? Going back to Africa? To hospitals instead of blood and guns?" She looked up sharply. "Every day." But then, her eyes softened, betraying her. "Then I see you, and I wonder if maybe I was meant to be here." His jaw tightened. He rose, came to her side, and knelt like he had that first night after the attack. Taking her hand, he kissed her wrist, lingering as if memorizing her pulse. "You're poison, doctor," he whispered against her skin. "Because you make me want things I can never have. Peace, a life without blood." Her fingers curled into his hair, pulling him closer. "Then fight for it, Wu Jin. Don't tell me it's impossible. If you love me, you'll try." It was the first time either of them had spoken the word aloud. Love. His eyes flickered with something raw and unguarded. "I would burn my empire for you," he swore, voice shaking. "But if I fall, they'll kill us both." 2 days later, her warning proved true. The police struck. They raided one of Wu Jin's warehouses at dawn, seizing drugs, weapons, and half his men. Rumors spread fast, betrayal within the ranks. Purity watched Wu Jin's rage build like a storm. His eyes were no longer soft, no longer tender. They were the eyes of the Maifia boss again. His men trembled as he demanded names, loyalty, blood. And yet, when his gaze fell on her, the storm broke into silence. "Pack a bag," he ordered her that night. "We're leaving Seoul." Purity's heart raced. "Running. Surviving," he corrected. "If the world wants to tear me apart, they'll have to chase me to the ends of the earth. But you," he gripped her shoulders, eyes burning. "You're coming with me, even if I have to drag you." She should have refused. She should have told him she wanted nothing to do with fugitives and bloodshed. But instead, her lips formed the words that sealed her fate. "Then wherever you go, I'll go." That night, for the first time, they shared more than a kiss. It wasn't frantic or reckless, but slow and aching. A desperate binding of two souls who knew the world was against them. And as dawn broke over Seoul, Purity realized something terrifying. She was no longer just the fiery doctor who had saved a wounded man. She was the woman who had given her heart to the devil himself, and had no intention of taking it back. The black SUVs left Seoul under the cloak of night, engines humming low as they sped down the highway. Wu Jin sat beside Purity in the back seat, his hand wrapped around hers, refusing to let go. His men drove in silence, their eyes sharp, scanning the roads for shadows that might mean enemies. Purity leaned against the window, watching the lights of the city fade behind them. She should have felt relief, freedom from the mansion, from the suffocating walls of the underworld. But instead, her chest ached with a strange longing. She already missed the life she had never chosen but had somehow become hers. Wu Jin's voice broke the silence. "We'll lay low in Busan for a while. From there, maybe Japan. Or Russia if necessary." Purity turned to him, frowning. "Is this what our life will be? Running, hiding, fighting? Forever?" He squeezed her hand. His eyes, though weary, softened when they met hers. "No, not forever. Just until I make sure no one can touch us." She searched his face, seeing the steel in his jaw but also the vulnerability in his gaze. Against her better judgment, her heart whispered, "He means it. For me, he'd fight the whole world." In Busan, Wu Jin rented a secluded villa by the sea under a false name. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, waves crashing as if echoing their turmoil. For the first time, there were no guards hovering, no meetings, no guns laid on the table. Just them. One evening, Purity stood barefoot on the balcony, the salty breeze whipping through her hair. Wu Jin came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "You don't belong in this world of mine," he murmured against her neck. She turned in his arms, her fiery eyes meeting him. "And yet here I am, by your side." He kissed her then, slow and lingering, as if trying to brand her into his soul. And later that night, in the quiet shelter of the villa, they gave themselves to each other fully, two broken souls clinging together against the storm outside. But peace is never eternal for a man like Wu Jin. On the third morning, Purity awoke to find him gone from their bed. Panic gripped her until she saw him on the beach below, pistol in hand, firing at bottles lined on the sand, practicing, preparing. When he returned, sweat glistening on his skin, she confronted him. "You said you wanted peace, but you're still living like war is tomorrow." He met her gaze, unflinching. "Because war is tomorrow, and if it comes, I'll be ready. I won't let anyone take you from me, Purity. Not the police, not my enemies, not fate itself." She touched his cheek, forcing his eyes to soften. "Maybe the way to protect me is to finally let go of the empire, to choose us, not the streets." Wu Jin's silence was heavy, the waves crashing louder behind them. For a man who had built his life on power, giving it up was more terrifying than death. But looking at her, he realized for the first time he wanted to try. Yet, as they stood there holding on to each other, a shadow watched from the cliffs above, a rival who had tracked them. Their fragile haven was already compromised. The villa by the sea had begun to feel like a dream. Purity would wake to the sound of waves, cook simple meals with Wu Jin, and even laugh with him over clumsy attempts at chopping vegetables. For brief hours, they were not mafia bosses and abducted doctors, just men and women, lovers finding warmth in exile. Episode 1 ends here. The next episode comes up soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.